We told you about this on Friday night, and then over the weekend, we put it into some context. So we will summarize the story for you once more. Last summer, a group of American intelligence analysts working for the U.S. government issued a report on the origins of COVID. They've been asked to, and they did. Now, these people work at CIA, NSA, a bunch of other agencies, and they concluded that the coronavirus may very well have been manufactured in a lab by the Chinese military. Turns out that's not a talk radio conspiracy theory. As a factual matter, it's a very real possibility. And if it's true, if that's what happened, and again, many highly informed people believe that's exactly what happened, that would mean the Chinese government is responsible for killing millions of people around the world. And would also raise questions, obvious questions about motive. Why would China unleash a deadly virus on the globe? To the American mind, that is an unimaginable thing to do, but the Chinese government thinks very differently from the way that we think. And here's why. America has been the dominant power in the world for more than 100 years, since the end of the First World War when Europe destroyed itself. Empires destroying themselves always paves way for new empires, something we should keep in mind at the moment. So American attitudes about everything are shaped by generations of casual affluence. We're in charge and we always will be in charge. That's what all of us assume. But the Chinese government does not assume this about us or them. Until fairly recently, China was a poor country. There are still millions of living Chinese who remember seeing their neighbors starve to death during famines. As a result of that experience, China is very aggressive and very ambitious in ways that your average State Department official from Bethesda could not begin to comprehend. So would a government like that use COVID as a bioweapon? Well, why wouldn't it? The coronavirus reshuffled the global order. It crushed the American economy. It made China preeminent. If China takes over the world, and that appears to be coming, COVID will be one of the main reasons it was able to. So by definition, you would think we would want to know where COVID came from. That's a meaningful question. But Joe Biden doesn't want to know. He ignored the report he ordered. He ignored the findings of his own intelligence agencies. That's bizarre when you think about it. And if you think that's weird, how about this? This February, Biden canceled a counter-espionage program called the China Initiative. Now, the point of that program was stopping the rampant threat of our national security secrets by the government of China. But the White House decided, to very little fanfare, that somehow that program was racist, and therefore it had to end. That means the Chinese government can now spy and steal with impunity. Not since Franklin Roosevelt colluded with Joseph Stalin has an American president done anything like that. But Joe Biden didn't hesitate. And then he kept doing things like this. Now Biden says he plans to end tariffs against China, tariffs that Donald Trump put in place and that China has been complaining about ever since. And not only is Joe Biden ending tariffs against China, Joe Biden's Justice Department has just arrested the man responsible for those tariffs. His name is Peter Navarro. He was the most effective China hawk in the Trump administration. Last month, Peter Navarro was handcuffed at a Washington, D.C. airport and dragged to jail in leg irons. Why? Supposedly because of January 6th. But Peter Navarro had literally nothing to do with January 6th. He wasn't even there. But Joe Biden didn't stop there. Steve Bannon was the other notable voice in the Trump administration, warning about the growing power and malicious intent of the Chinese government. In November of last year, Steve Bannon was also arrested by the Biden Justice Department, also on absurd pretexts. So take a step back. What's the message here? Well, it's unmistakable. Don't criticize the Chinese government or we will throw you in jail.
By that I mean we are a nation of immigrants. That's who we are. That is not hyperbole. We teach our kids we're a melting pot. The God's truth is we are a polyglot. We are a melting pot. It is the ultimate source of our strength. It is the ultimate source of who we are, what we become. And it started all the way back in the late 1700s. There's been a constant, unrelenting stream of immigration, not in little trickles, but in large numbers. I had an opportunity to be in Singapore with Lee Kuan Yew, the former president, who is now 93 years old, and I was talking to him on my way to China to meet with President Xi, and I said he's known as sort of the Henry Kissinger of Asia, for real. I mean, he's a very wise man. And I said to him, I said, what are the Chinese doing now? And he thought, because we were talking about how rapidly a man I've come to know relatively well, President Xi has consolidated power. And he said to me, and speaks perfect English, he said, they're in America looking for the buried black box. And I looked at him just like you're looking at me, like, what's he talking about? He said they're looking for that secret that allows America to constantly be able to remake itself, unlike any other country in the world. And I said, I can presume to tell you what's in that black box, Mr. President. I'm old enough now. I said, one is that there is, in America, there is an overwhelming skepticism for orthodoxy. From the time a child, whether they're naturalized or they're native born, they think about it. A child never gets criticized in our education system for challenging orthodoxy, for challenging the status quo. I would argue it's unlike any other large country in the world. So there's a second thing in that black box, an unrelenting stream of immigration, nonstop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America from then and on will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
Breaking news, and this cuts to many things. Caitlin Collins of CNN puts out, and our crack worm staff caught this, if we can get up in Denver, but this goes to the invasion of our country. When I say enemies, foreign and domestic, I mean these international institutions, particularly ones centered out of Geneva. Why? As we've shown you many times, the engine room of the UN is in Geneva. It is totally 100% controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. This is where they do the work out of. The stuff at New York is just the Security Council. That's just all showtime. That's performative. The work gets done and your money gets done. Remember, it's the UN and the NGOs that are working. They're the support element for the big push of the illegal alien invaders. People can't come from Latin America, can't fly in from around the world, these places, and get up through Mexico. Either you got to have two things. You have to have a relationship with the cartels, and you have to have a relationship with the UN and the NGOs. This new border bill commits to 3 years of full funding for the NGOs. And I think there's 248 of them, if memory serves me correctly. One of our guests the other day walked through it. But Caitlin Collins, wow, this is from her, and I quote, wow, the State Department has temporarily paused additional funding to the United Nations. I think it's, what's it called, the Relief and Works Administration, UNRWA. It's basically the UN Relief Organization. Amid allegations that 12 of the UN agencies' employees were involved in the Hamas attack. Let me repeat that 12 of them were involved in this barbaric Hamas attack. Per State Department spokesman Matt Miller. This is not a Breitbart. This is not Darren Beattie. This is not War Room. That's CNN per the State Department. Quote, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken spoke with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on January 25 to emphasize the necessity of a thorough and swift investigation of this matter. Yo, dude, what about the same thing that's happened on the southern border? That's an invasion of our country. They invaded Israel, had 12 employees. The UN is up to their neck in terrorists and terrorist sponsors. Why, Johnson, why the CR, why don't we recon Congress and say we're not sending more money there immediately? Why? Because you're worthless and weak. The country's being invaded, our allies are being attacked all over the world, and what are we doing about it? Sending tough letters. It's time to take tough action. United Nations, 12 of the UN agency's employees were involved in the Hamas attack. What has that been called? The most serious attack on Jews since the Holocaust? Pretty big, huh? Right? Does that raise it up to a level? They were involved, and I guarantee you do a real investigation, you're going to find a lot more than 12, and you're going to find it all the way to the top. And you're funding this. You, taxpayers out there right now, you're funding this United Nations. Here's what the United Nations get. Grand total, here's the amount of money, zero. In fact, we ought to do a massive audit there and carve back all the money they've misallocated, lied about, stolen, and grifted off the top, just like Zelensky. The people in the United States, we've got enough problems here. You walked around a major city lately? You gone out to a rural community? In Europe, here's what the elites have done to buy off their populations. They got full health care, pensions, and 6 weeks off in the summer. Oh, by the way, same thing they got in Ukraine. Full pensions. They get pensions, which you're paying for, and health care. You got health care? Don't think so. You got a pension? Well, 90% of the American people don't. And what they're trying to do right now, the coax these guys are trying to take the $1,200 you get from Social Security that you put in. They're trying to take that and Medicare. You get 6 weeks off. You get 6 weeks off in the summer. Do you? How's that go? You go to Europe, then you go hang out in the Caribbean. You go to your summer home up at the lake. Is that what you do? No, you don't do that. Most of you, because you're working to make ends meet. You're working to make your community better and your family better, which is all you want to do. Is, hey, leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. They're thinking of every type of new tax, carbon tax, taxes, every regressive tax in the world. Why? They want to pay for this crap. And you know why? Because they want to destroy you. They think you're trash. If they didn't think you're trash, why would they fund all this? If they didn't think you were trash, why would the United Nations work with the NGOs and, hey, Catholic Relief, the Lutheran Church, all of them down there? And what's their number one focus? These organizations to take billions of dollars. And we know the New York Post reported the other day, $1.5 billion of your cash to the UN to go down to Central America to give them cash money for when they come to the United States, and phones and all of it. My mantra since high noon on the 20th of January in the year of our Lord 2021, moments before I was fully sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party, and you might note with about 6 other people that the Biden State Department never made one mention of. I don't care. I don't need the Biden regime to stand up for me. I'll stand up for myself. Hey, and here's what I did. CCP sanctioned me. Put it where the sun don't shine. We're taking you guys down. And the 400 traders that came to San Francisco and toasted you. We know who you are. We have your names. That'll be a hall of shame. Worse than going to Hitler in 35. Because then people didn't know everything about Hitler. That was revealed later. But in Xi, we know it all. Okay? We know it all, and you can't look away from it. So if you're with them, you're with a murderous dictator. And if you support the CR Bacon and the rest of you weaklings, then you support the UN giving $1.5 billion of taxpayer cash. Folks out in Nebraska, how you doing? You doing great? Working out for you? You like a guy that supports the invasion of the country? Danes over the NRSC? You slip that thing into, you're one of the guys that slipped that thing into NDA, takes President Trump's ability to negotiate with NATO to make them pay so they're actually an ally and not a protectorate. This is a scam by the globalists, and here's what it is. Let me repeat this. Elections have consequences. Stolen elections have catastrophic consequences, and just look around you. See what you see. Don't take it from me. Look around you and think. Our new mantra. Trump won. He's the nominee. The big money and the Murdochs better understand it, or they're not going to be easy times for your head. If you watch Fox, you are part of the problem. I hate to be so blunt about that, audience, but hey, you can't support the Murdochs. You can't support these fat cats that want to force Nikki Haley, the Viper, into the West Wing.
United Nations budgets millions of dollars for migrants headed to the U.S. this year. The UN plans to launch cash and voucher and multi-purpose cash assistance programs to 624,000 immigrants bound for the U.S. According to UN documents, the programs will hand out $372 million in cash, debit cards, and bank and mobile transfers. Well, this comes after the House Committee on Homeland Security released a report last November showing the immigration crisis has caused the U.S. close to $500 billion.
Welcome back. Well, illegal border crossings break a new record, with CBP reporting over 300,000 encounters in December, the highest month ever recorded.
Yeah, and our next guest outlines in a new op-ed how it could be impacting your wallet.
Todd Binsman is a senior fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, and he joins us now. Todd, tell us how this crisis, which is a crisis that has been acknowledged almost by everyone except for the President of the United States, affects everyone's wallet.
Well, for one thing, they're not just coming here on their own dime. The United Nations, it turns out, is spending hundreds of millions of dollars in cash handouts, food, shelter, something called humanitarian transportation, really every human need that is required to make the long journey through Latin America, Central America, and Mexico. And who pays the UN? Who's the UN's major funder? It's the U.S. taxpayer is paying for this. How do we know this? Because there's a brand new budget document that the UN puts out for 2024. They're going to spend $1.6 billion to help 3 million illegal immigrants move through 17 different countries of Latin America and the Caribbean and Mexico. And that includes $370 million in cash cards, debit cards, $25 million in transportation assistance to help them move through. And the budget document also clearly shows that they are witting, that they know that these are illegal immigrants and that they are moving illegally through their own member states. And they're using 248 NGOs to help hand out the cash.
So go ahead.
Well, Todd, I was going to say, first of all, the UN is 0 for 2 with us this morning. But this money is supposed to go to legitimate asylum seekers. What's the vetting process like?
That's a big mystery, but I've been down at the border. I've been to these weigh stations. I've interviewed the illegal immigrants who are receiving this. I've had them show me their debit cards, the whole thing. They say that it's for the most vulnerable, but they're planning to hand out debit cards and cash equivalents to 624,000 illegal immigrants in 2024. None of them look particularly vulnerable to me. I mean, a lot of them are grown men. They're adults. They don't seem weak or sick or anything like that. They say it's for the most vulnerable, but I don't see it. I'm sure there are some vulnerable people that are receiving this cash aid, but I also think that they just want to help as many illegal immigrants as possible move to the United States, and they know it and they say it in the budget document, which is linked in my New York Post and the Center for Immigration Studies piece that I published on this matter.
I think you're exactly right. There's an agenda there. So just to be clear for our audience, we're funding the UN. The UN is funding people in Central America who they deem to be vulnerable, even if they're not vulnerable, to make the trek to the United States with our taxpayer dollars.
There's a little bit of irony there. Yes, and some Republicans have been angry about this ever since it was revealed that we're just handing out all this cash along the way, that our United Nations is doing this. Look, a lot of the money is earmarked by the White House, by the State Department, and goes straight to the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, UNHCR, and the IOM, the International Organization for Migration. That's the pass-through, but there's 15 other UN agencies that are involved as well.
Wow. Well, Todd, thanks for doing the spade work on this.
Illuminating.
We're going to dig in even
Thank you,
more.
Todd.
Scary. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.